not work well. All right. I'm your friendly host, Joel Tyner, former county legislator for Dutchess County for Rhinebeck and Clinton. Out here, and there's Shabazz and Josephine out here in Portlandia. And just real quick before we do introductions, I went to, I think, the first Zero Waste conference that New York State, or one of the first New York State had in December 2009. And I met Neil Seldman and Paul Connett there up in Albany and learned about the wonderment of economic development done the right way with the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. Now Neil is with Zero Waste USA. And Neil Seldman came to the county legislature, came to Vassar College, and Neil and I got a resolution passed in March 2009, 25-0. Rob Weiss, all the Republicans, all the Democrats in the Dutchess County legislature voted on a resolution saying, let's draw down these federal stimulus funds, the ERA funds, for zero waste planning. Bill O'Neill, the current county executive in Dutchess County, I believe he was deputy county executive at that point under Steinhaus. They never followed through with that. One of many things they never followed through with. Earlier this month, 3 weeks ago, Doreen Tignanelli of the town of Poughkeepsie, amazing environmentalist for decades, she emailed me this article that was in the Albany Times-Union about how Bill O'Neill, the county executive, is going to be making a presentation in September for the Dutchess County legislature to vote on a new solid waste management plan for Dutchess County. And half of that article seemed to be a puff piece about, yay, pushing for composting. Brenda Platt from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance really did a close analysis of the proposed swamp and points out how hypocritical that is. And the other article had some truths that I had never before seen printed about incineration. So Doreen's email to me got me started. I've been working with Mike Ewall. Neil Seldman put me on to Mike Ewall. And so we're recording now, so I'll do the introductions. And before the speakers start, before the speakers begin, I'd like everybody to go around and just say one sentence about their name, where they're from, and maybe just a sentence statement. So we have Manna Jo Greene, county legislator extraordinaire, former environmental director for Hudson River Sloop Clearwater. Manna, I'm going to come back to you. Jill Fieldstein. Is it Fieldstein or Fieldstein?
Yes. Depends who family you ask.
From concerns.
Great answer. I love that answer.
Good answer.
We have my mom, Judy Malmstrom of Breathe Free Dutchess and Zero Waste Dutchess. We have Shabazz Jackson and Josephine Papagni from Greenway Environmental Services. We have folks that the only way I know them is from the Dutchess County Progressive Action Alliance. I'm sure they are not here officially representing that organization, but thanks to Lisa Call for being here and Laura Foreman for being here, and Doreen Tignanelli, an incredible environmentalist for many, many years. Gina Klein, also, the only way I know her is from the DCPAA. And of course, Mike Ewall from energyjustice.net. Amazing work, successfully fighting incineration all over the country. And there's my friend Dave. And Neil Seldman, of course, Institute for Local Self-Reliance, formerly Zero Waste USA. All right, so before the presenters, and the four presenters tonight are Manna Jo Greene, Shabazz Jackson. I'm gonna have Shabazz and Josephine go first, if that's okay with everybody, because I gave them the faulty information last week, and we've kind of heard everybody else. I did not allow Manna Jo Greene a chance to go over her slides last week, so it's okay with everybody. Manna's going to go over her slides after Shabazz and Josephine, and then Neil and Mike. Hopefully, if everybody can stay with us. So I'm going to shut up there and just going from my top left, Brady Bunch, Hollywood Square style. Pam, if you could just say your name, where you're from, and one thing you hope to learn, or one thing you'd like to state to us tonight. I'm going to ask to unmute you. I think you're muted.
Find out if we're all unmuted.
Pam Winter, towns of Clinton and Pleasant Valley. The thing that I hope we can spread the word about is the truth about the incinerator and how very, very dangerous it is, and how crazy nutty this new plan that they're going to be presenting is. That's it for now.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Jill Fieldstein next, if that's okay. And I'm hoping that we can pull the sword out of the stone and slay the dragon and get her organization, Concerned Citizens of Dover, to officially endorse something. But at least we got. You want to say something?
Yeah, I'm only one voice, but I'll try. Jill Fieldstein from Dover, Concerned Citizens of Dover, on a related topic, but to get people revved up on people power. Yesterday, we just won an Article 78 proceeding against our town board, our planning board, for improperly approving a project that would potentially pollute the Great Swamp. So it's completely unrelated to the incinerator, but nonetheless, it's people power. I'm going to put the decision in the chat. If you're interested, you can read it. When we work together, we can do great things. I'm sorry, Neil.
Every victory is cumulative and helps the next battle on your neighbors as well. So thanks for that work.
And I forgot to mention that Jill also ran for the state assembly. Was it a year or two ago? And ran an amazing campaign. I tried four times for state legislature and failed miserably 4 times.
I failed once. That was enough.
Abe Lincoln lost 5 before he won. I'm going to go to my mom next. Judy Malmstrom, do you want to say something before we start the presentation?
Town of Clinton. I'm just very interested in finally doing something to get this incinerator closed. We're running out of time, and we've got to work quickly.
All right. And my Christmas Hanukkah present that I'm going to ask Doreen Tignanelli to give me is for all of us to see her face on one of these Zoom calls. But Doreen, you want to say something before we started?
Just that, I don't know, there's so many things wrong here with the incinerator. It's hard to even know where to begin. I've been following some of their annual inspection reports.
Please leave your message or
and anyway, their annual inspections show that.
So I went over to Jafar's place.
Muting my old friend Dave. Doreen, do you know Dave?
Unfortunately,
yeah,
we know who he is. Can you mute him?
He's bent on. Go ahead, Doreen.
Okay, well, all right. I'm not going to talk over him. So
I just muted him again. Go ahead.
Anyway, there's so many things wrong at the plant. I don't know if people are aware, but in March of this year, there was a fire at the plant. I've filed a FOIL with the DEC for those records. I've looked at annual inspection reports that year after year say that they've had deficiencies that have been reported in previous years, which have not been corrected. So the place is a mess. That's it.
Thank you, Doreen. And also, I think Mike Ewall knows about this. There was some incinerator somewhere in the country a year, 2 or 3 ago, had a fire, and that it shut down. That was, I think, one of the big reasons why it shut down. I'm gonna go to Gina Klein next. Gina, do you want to say one thing before the presenters start?
I'm from the town of Poughkeepsie. I have a very long history regarding this issue, starting about almost 50 years ago with the League of Women Voters, and I have not been following it actively in a long time, and I'm really interested in finding out where things stand today and what might help the situation.
Well, Gina, God bless you, and Lisa Call and Laura Foreman. There are 3 dynamic members of this amazing organization called the Dutchess County Progressive Action Alliance. So that gives me, it should give all of us hope. Lisa Call, did you want to say something before the presenters start?
Not really. Thank you for this opportunity. I have to say that I am running for County Legislature, District 6. So it's really important for me to be informed, and any kind of information, advice that you want to be coming my way, I would really welcome it.
And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I just wanted the brief thing. Lisa recently made headlines with Barrington Atkins. When I was sitting in the county legislature chair sometimes, in my seat, sometimes I would pull out my phone and record things. So before tonight is over, I don't know, Lisa, you want to talk about it now, but just really the lack of civility up there on the 6th floor, 22 Market. well,
We don't want to get into that.
we're gonna do it.
Yeah, may I say something to Lisa? Hi, Lisa, this is Neil. I heard you say that you're running for office and that you're open to some discussion about that. I got a call from someone who was, I think Ted, who was on the call last week, and we're setting up a meeting between myself and his candidate in Poughkeepsie or someplace in Dutchess County. I'll let you know, and we could all meet at the same time, because I've helped outline campaigns based on the waste issue and related issues, of course, like jobs and so forth. I'm batting 500, 2 victories, 2 losses, but I'd be very happy to share what I do know. And may I also say that Mike Ewall is quite a veteran of these types of things as well. But I'm happy to meet with you.
Great, thank you. And as is Manna Jo, of course.
Yes.
And yeah, I would, I've got your email, phone number, and I will follow up with you.
Great.
And I'll put my email in the chat too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank the both of you. And again, Neil is referencing Ted Millar, who lives in Ulster County, directly across from the incinerator in Highland. And Ted Millar is the campaign manager for Tommy Zerhelen. And I could be wrong, but it seems like that campaign is very interested in working with Neil and the rest of us on fighting for what's right. Laura Foreman, did you want to say something before we started?
Hi, everybody. I'm in the city of Poughkeepsie. I am in Ward 1. I also lost a race 2 years ago for Ward 1 Common Council. Most of my time these days has been spent with the legislature in terms of the homeless issues and just others unbelievable things that are happening here in the city. Like nobody wants to walk on Main Street anymore. So this is like my first intro into the incinerator. I've like seen pieces, I just haven't read through them.
You have. Thank you, Laura. My old friend Dave Heller is here. Dave helped bring me out of my shell in 9th, 10th grade and rescued me from a life of solitude. Dave, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Dave is wearing my mom's hat there, by the way.
Yes,
Dave,
it's very warm. Nice.
You want to say anything before we started?
What was that?
You want to say something before we started?
I love Gina's logo. I started Rank Choice New York, and I'm against the incinerator.
All right, thank you, Dave. Can we go to so I want to have Shabazz and Josephine go first. Manna, did you want to say something before Shabazz and Josephine? And then I'll ask Neil and Mike if they want to say something after you.
Well, the only thing is I have another call I need to be on. So going second will be very helpful. And I will give my introduction when I put up my slides. Gotcha.
Thank you for your flexibility. Neil, did you want to say something before Shabazz and Josephine, and then?
No, not at all. I'm anxious to hear everybody.
All right, and Mike, did you want to say something before? You can give a presentation later, of course, but before Shabazz and Josephine start?
I can wait until later. Thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, so here, without further ado, Shabazz, Josephine, and Josephine Papagni. I think I might have met Shabazz at a Hudson River Sloop Clearwater event at some point in the 80s or 90s. But I forget how I was put in touch with Shabazz, but just amazing stuff. Food waste composting with his partner for 20 years there, Josephine Papagni. Vassar Farms, they did it the right way without odors, with the chemistry, with the groundwater. Shabazz got the city of Beacon up to something like a 70% recycling rate. I don't know what, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I'm gonna stop on that. And I know you guys have slides. You guys have a slides or a PowerPoint, so I should make you the host so you can
Okay.
share. All right, so let me put that down and make you guys the host. Make you the host. All right, so now you guys have the power to share.
Just go to to the PowerPoint or his share screen. See, I know less than you.
And share, just where at the bottom where it says share screen.
Okay, got it. All right. Now I gotta find it. Come on.
That's it. We can read your email.
Oh, that's great, because I'm not even seeing that. That's what's so strange. Huh.
He
Is
has
there anything good that I'm?
cheesy meatballs with mariners.
Oh, there, wait a minute, here we go. Maybe this will. Let me get rid of these people. All right, I'm gonna go to Greenway stuff and see if this brings it up. So sorry. You know,
Okay.
everyone's in a hurry too. Now, does that get it?
Yep. And
Oh, right.
and you want to
Okay.
make it bigger, or is that big enough? That's big
I'm
enough.
gonna, it should,
Awesome, perfect. Okay.
The F5 key and it'll make it full screen.
say it again.
Hit F5 on your top of your keyboard.
5 on the top of the.
You
Might not.
said F5 no.
If that doesn't do it, then at the bottom where there's that slider set with the plus and minus right to the left of that.
Oh, yep.
hit
Let's see
that-
what that does.
Not the slider, but next to it to the left. No, not that. To the left.
Yeah, I think if you do slideshow as you were about to, there you go.
Okay, so sorry, guys. This is it's kind of interesting. I listened to Jill, I think, mentioned people power, and Laura talked about what's happening on the streets of Poughkeepsie. I mean, this is happening everywhere too. So we got involved with the Garlic Festival, which hosts 40 to 50,000 people in a 2-day period. And they wanted to go beyond this thing of piles of garbage, which is what it was, piles of garbage on the ground, where they had to bring in front end loaders and dump trucks at the end of every session. And so we were asked to come up with a zero waste plan to do that. One of the things we knew, and we learned a lot of this from our Clearwater volunteer days with zero waste there, was you need a lot of volunteers. So we had none, zero to begin with. So we went out everywhere you can think of. We were at the rail trail in Rosendale. We went to Seed Song Farm in Kingston, where that rooster scared me to death, really kept walking around me. Unbelievable. SUNY New Paltz, Vassar, Marist, the Bruderhof community. You could say Shabazz at the end, because we were getting desperate, was calling old grade school friends and saying, I will never ask you for another favor. Not true, but so here we were, we had 136 people over the 2 days that filled 158 of the time slots. And we put together a pop-up transfer station. And interestingly enough, on the top left there, those 3 blue collection containers were for cans and bottles. We did not even fill a quarter of one, which I think is very positive that the vendors are not selling a lot of bottled and plastic stuff. Then we had a 30-yard roll-off for cardboard, 2 20-yard roll-offs for what's in the middle is the food waste that's in compostable bags. It's sitting on top of a odor control medium, which controls the water, the fluid that comes off of food waste and the odors. And then that far right was a 20-yarder of garbage. We had a very happy transfer station operator who really had the 10-year-olds jumping down that cardboard to get it ready for the roll-off. At the end of the festival, that was on a Sunday, that Tuesday, October 4th, they delivered the compost to the food waste to our facility. The compostable bags, as you can see, are tore open with the teeth of the excavator. And then the material is blended up with a hot active compost, meaning it has the microbes from composting material already. And at the end of 24 hours, this is an actual temperature of 160 degrees, which really speaks to the level of active microbes that we have. And the results, quickly, I'll go through it. We had a total of 18.5 tons of material. 16.5 of that was recovered, or 89%. And you can see the quick breakdown. 15 tons was food waste. A quarter was used cooking oil. 1 ton was cardboard, and a very little bit, a quarter of a ton maybe, was the commingled cans and bottles. 2 tons were trash, which we have big plans to be able to even eliminate nearly every bit of that. A quick look at this, to pull just money wise, because that seems to move people, the pulling and tipping fees for the landfilling versus zero waste. The 15 tons to tip it at the landfill is going to be, to pull and tip is 2,200. Zero waste would be 800. The environmental impacts, when you divert 15 tons of food waste from landfilling, you end up with 13.21 tons of avoided CO2 emissions, 2.25 tons of avoided methane. And when you look at the CO2, the offsets would be 1,200 gallons of gasoline, just to give you a feel for what that 1-2 day event.
It's 12,000, yeah.
1,200. The environmental impacts of transporting the food waste, because as we know, there's no place to bring material, so garbage goes to Seneca Meadows around here, a 450-mile round trip, and that was from Saugerties, would end up being 112 gallons of diesel fuel, where driving it to Clintondale, which by the way is even in a smaller truck, it's not in the big truck, but driving it to Clintondale would be 22 gallons, 12 gallons of gasoline, of fuel. And the successful completion of composting, as we all know, kind of preaching to the choir here, returns the fertility to the soil. To the far left there is a regenerative farming project where they established a new apple orchard using our compost. We know about pollinator gardens and rain gardens, how compost can clean water and backyard gardens, stormwater management. There's so much that we can do, and we need good, healthy compost. I'm going to turn this, the rest of this presentation over to Shabazz, because this has kind of been his baby, well, both of these, but this next piece, he has really worked practically single-handedly. Okay.
Many of you have been to our facility, and certainly everyone is invited to come. We give tours now several days a week. And the challenge is to, you can do, if you work hard enough, you can accomplish anything in your own backyard. But the challenge for us is to be able to take the factors of no odor, no flies, and scale it down to the community garden size. And we set up partnering with the church and a couple of church-related groups. We've set up at the community garden our version of the composting system that many of you have seen at the at our facility on a small scale. So it works exactly the same and it looks the same. It's just at the community scale. So we trained a crew to be able to build the ecology box. And so you could see there in the background where I have my hand, that is kind of like the yard waste composter that you see in many places, but we've added our ecology box, which is our own invention, and you could switch. And the ecology box, in the beginning, it was a little challenging to get people to stop throwing their food waste on the ground in the other composting system. So we used this picture of our cat, which was extremely effective at getting people to put their material into the ecology box.
And to cover it like a cat would.
Mm-hmm. So the ecology box is 4 blocks deep, and this one is set up to hold 500 pounds at a time. So the facility can take 500 pounds of food waste in a day. And it's designed to replace the cans that are usually pretty offensive and usually get picked up when you do have a program. This is in Kingston once a week, and is so this is designed to replace that. And this is a tour and a training, and we are standing around we have received 3 tons of food waste at this facility with this training, and we receive about 500 pounds a week. We think that the capacity, our next step is to increase it to 1,000 pounds a week, which would be about 24 tons a year. So this is a kind of the overview of what it looks like with the community garden, and we think of it as food scraps to food, and it all can take place in a pretty small footprint, and so that it is facility supported community gardens. Our attempt or our hope is to build 200 of these. We have the material, and we want to start with the school systems. We have a letter going out to BOCES, and we want to tie in with BOCES to really upgrade the existing and then build in all of the facilities. We worked with 4-year-olds at one of the schools here in New Paltz last year, and well, it was this year, but last semester. And we found that a typical 4-year-old can contribute to this whole system and can utilize it. So it's right now there's a couple of grants available, which school districts are eligible for, and one is the food scrap diversion. It's up to $250,000. It's got a rolling application process, and that would be the primary source of funding for this. The goal is to create 2 after-school jobs per garden, and this is our contribution to the idea of a green jobs pipeline. And it begins with the high school, and it goes on, through college, to be able to hopefully in the future train the people that are going to take our places.
I wanted to mention one other thing too, that I know the thrust of what this meeting is probably about, I think, is how are we going to manage solid waste? And we obviously want to get rid of that incinerator. I mean, we live, although we're across the river, we are right across from it. Like as the crow flies, you know, we're getting more mercury than anybody.
Yeah, we're 9 miles away.
Yeah. So I would like to mention that the more we pull out of the waste stream, particularly this wet organic material, the safer our choices are. And we can greatly reduce our need to dispose of anything by just dealing with the organic fraction first. And it's shocking how many people, given the opportunity, will bring. We have a guy who bikes over from Poughkeepsie because he said there's just no options to get rid of your household organic waste. So thank you very much. And we do invite you all, and Joel can give out our information through his contacts to come and see. Neil has kicked the tires many times, Manna Jo too. So thank you very, very much.
Indeed, I have.
Yes, you have.
And if I could just add one sentence to what a great presentation. As you take out the organics, you also reduce the negative impacts of landfills, not only incinerators, but landfills as well, because they're just like they're bad actors in an incinerator, they're bad actors in a landfill, no matter what type of landfill you have.
Now, I just wanted to add one thing quickly, is that September 5th, 6 o'clock, at the town of Hurley City Hall, Town Hall, we're going to be making our first kind of introduction presentation to zero waste, what we call Zero Waste Hurley. And we're in the process of developing our municipal model for a zero waste system. And so one of these or two of these are going to be built right there in Hurley. But this is our primary training location. So the next date would be I think October 9th, where we're going to have the whole presentation, which will be the kind of the explanation of our approach to zero waste and for the town of Hurley. So we answered a request for proposal that they put out, and it fits in with it actually fits in with what the Resource Recovery Agency put out as a statement of interest. So we responded to that, and all of the ideas that we're going to be doing in Hurley are written up in that statement of interest, in our response to the statement of interest.
So we've been selected, we've been awarded this RFP to convert their transfer station to zero waste. I mean, we're like seriously elated by this.
This is
but
so
our focus is backyard composting.
Go ahead, Neil.
This is so incredible because I'm working in 3 places that need a zero waste transfer station, including Washington, D.C., where and Montgomery County and so forth. So you may know, I'm coming up. So let's have a long dinner together.
Yeah, we'll meet in Brooklyn.
That's great. We're living in Montclair, New Jersey now. We moved to be close to our family, so we could meet at your daughter's restaurant anytime.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Okay, so how do I give you back your screen now? You're on mute.
You have to go to my picture and click on the 3 dots and then say make host. Or you could just go to Manna. Manna's doing her her presentation next. So you can just make
Okay.
Manna so she can do a screen share.
But I think that they need to stop sharing first.
Okay, I made you host.
All right, well,
Okay.
I'll try to share, but
There you go.
okay, very good.
May I say one word a bit, as an introduction to Manna? Because Manna has played a big role in many of our careers, but this is a funny thing because Shabazz is here as well. These two people, Shabazz and Manna, have provided me with two introductions that are unforgettable in over 50 years. One was when Manna introduced me as the Martin Luther King of recycling or waste, and which it was wonderful. This happened 30, 40 years ago, because I've been trying to live up to that ever since. And of course, he's a wonderful model. And then there's Shabazz, who introduced me at this forum in Vassar. He said, and Neil Seldman is here. He used to be a thin guy with black hair. And I was standing there with
And
white
big
hair
glasses.
and a few more pounds. But what this also has helped me, because it's a struggle. I stay away from bagels and Coca-Cola, but I'm still striving to be thin. I'm not going to dye my hair, though.
Me either.
So you guys have been are deep in my memories of my career. And with that, I will introduce Manna, who's done so much more than just garbage with, I remember, nuclear energy and so forth. So I think everyone knows how wonderful she is.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. And I want to close that. And I just want to say this is a PowerPoint that I was asked to develop for the League of Women Voters and the Association of University Women, because I had been making these points, but they wanted it a presentation that they could educate their members and others with. And so there is someone here from the League. And I go back also to when Judith Enck was pregnant and we were in work on waste, trying to prevent incinerators from being built in New York and in the Hudson Valley. Excuse me. One thing I did was I worked with the League to try to influence the early creation of the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, where they were trying to site a landfill or build an incinerator. And I, at a public meeting within earshot of their president and vice president, said Malcolm Perney, who was the consultant to the UCRRA, Malcolm Perney's too smart to try to build an incinerator in Ulster County. And they got the message and they focused on landfills. Unfortunately, that siting process was corrupt and it didn't go well. And so we had approximately 20 landfills close. 2 of them were taken over by the agency for a few years. But when they had to close, now we've been exporting Ulster County's waste to Seneca Meadows, and I'll get into that in my presentation. But I wanted to mention that there was such a strong anti-incineration movement in Ulster County that the consultants got the message, and we were spared the battle that Dutchess and Westchester and others are now facing. So let me dive right in and thank my colleagues for their kind words. As I said before, there was an Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. There were 20 unlined municipal landfills, a lot of backyard burn barrels, and some early recycling efforts. A couple of 55-gallon drums at the back of a landfill, and a covered place to put paper, and early markets. And that was this picture up in the upper right is early telephone book recycling. So in 1986, the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency was formed as a public benefit authority by our beloved, the late Maurice Hinchy, when he was tangling with the mafia and trying to create positive models. And I joined in 1990. 1988, they passed the source separation and segregation of recyclables or reusable materials. That was the state law. And in 1991, we passed the Ulster County Solid Waste Plan. And over the next decade, we took our recycling rate from a documented 4% to 40%. And I don't want to say just recycling. It was also other forms of waste diversion, including composting. And then for all that time, the haulers were taking the material anywhere they wanted. But in 2012, flow control was passed. It had to go to the Supreme Court so that local municipalities could exert flow control. And it was a way to balance for the UCRA to balance the budget. But the county of Ulster is the backup if they need a net service fee. So that's sort of the background. We also passed some, and when I say we, I want to give credit to Tracy Bartels, the chair of our legislature, Laura Petit, who between Laura and I think we've worked 50 years for the UCRA and worked very closely with other people on this call. So our trifecta was...
Man, going back to that last slide on the bottom, did you ever put together the implementation plan?
I'll get to that. It's in draft, and Mike Ewall helped us a lot with that. Let me just get to that in a moment. Good question. So we banned styrofoam. We passed bring your own bag law, which became a model for New York State. And we also...
Hold on a second. Manna, can you hear me? I need to apologize. You're the host now, and Neil is trying to get in. He just texted me or sent me an email. He's trying to get in. Could you, sorry to interrupt. I can't let him in because you're the host now.
You don't have co-hosting abilities?
I don't
there?
know. Yeah, you should have made me co-host. Let me see if I can make you co-host.
There used to be a thing for co-host. Now it's just host. I can't, my Zooms, I used to make people co-hosts, and now I have like the Zoom Pro, but I don't have like the Zoom Super Pro plan.
All right, I let them in.
Thank you. Sorry to be a pain. There's Neil.
That's okay. I hope nobody else is waiting. I let 2 people in. Okay, so these were the laws. We also declared a climate emergency, which is very relevant because, as Shabazz pointed out, composting reduces the amount of greenhouse gases, particularly methane, a very potent greenhouse gas that is released from landfills. But if you can divert that and compost it, and also as we prevented the incinerator. So and incinerators are known for the amount of particulate pollution, dioxins, mercury, but also greenhouse gases, as I think Neil points out. So there is a climate emergency. We're continuing to work on that. And we also created, or by resolution, declared Ulster County a zero waste community, and then also passed the Food Recovery, Waste Prevention and Recovery Act. And now, my keys are not working. Not sure why. There we go. Drawdown was founded by Paul Hawken, and 90 scientists and experts have developed climate solutions with regard to materials management, reduce food waste, recycling. The numbers there are how valuable they are. So reducing food waste is number 3 in 100. Industrial recycling. I'm going to skip bioplastics because it's complicated, but refrigerant management also, because the chemicals that they use in refrigerant management are very potent greenhouse gases. We have a recycling oversight committee which represents all the different sectors, and that was created pretty early on. The zero waste commitment includes an action plan which has morphed into a zero waste implementation plan. When they passed the local solid waste management plan 2 or 3 years ago, it paid a lot of lip service to waste diversion, but there was no implementation strategy or timeline. So we've been working on trying to develop that. We work very specifically and intensely with Mike Ewall, ran out of funding, and the UCRA is having a lot of internal and external difficulties right now. So it's kind of on a shelf, but we are hoping to resolve all that and move forward. One of the great things that is moving forward is a feasibility study for a reuse innovation center that will take all the things that the Resource Recovery Agency doesn't already recycle. The bulky items, furniture, mattresses, books, clothing, landscaping materials, you name it. If you can't figure out what to do with it, you'll be able to take it to that reuse innovation center, which we will name after John Wackman, who started the repair cafes here in the Hudson Valley. I'm going to skip this, but I will send it to anyone who, this is a detail of how that system will work. But Sustainable Hudson Valley, with Mike Bennett, who developed this, are preparing that feasibility study, which we hope to site and build next year. And that'll be a giant step forward toward, we took in the decade I was at the Resource Recovery Agency, we took our waste stream from a documented 4% to 40%. Now we want to take it from 40% to 80%. And this is a major step in how that will happen. And a little bit more on the recovery center. But our purpose is to be able to site a landfill
And I'm
in
sorry,
Ulster.
Can you go back to that last slide, please, if you don't mind? Just for a second.
Yeah, I went back. Do you want to go back more?
Oh, no, keep on going. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
This one?
And then keep on, yep, wherever you were doing. You can go, keep on going. Sorry.
Okay. And on this slide, that quote, which is a little too small for me to read, but it's the Pete Seeger quote, that if it can't be reduced, repaired, recycled, recovered in some way, then it shouldn't be allowed to be produced or released into the materials stream. I didn't paraphrase that very well, but so in order to site a landfill and avoid trucking all of Ulster County's waste, which comes to the Resource Recovery Agency because of flow control, at the tune of $9, maybe even $10 million a year, and all that pollution, and I'll document that in a minute. But we think it's important to create a landfill, and at that landfill maybe even have what are called monofills for materials that could potentially be reclaimed, but there's not an economic market right now. But rather than put those materials in with mixed waste, for example, if there are not good markets for certain plastics or something like that. So in order to overcome the bad reputation that landfills have, there's some really important key things that we can do, and that's mostly to reduce odors, which composting will address significantly, but also C&D, particularly sheetrock. When sheetrock decomposes in a landfill, it gives off that rotten egg hydrogen sulfide smell. And so if it's less odorous and then also less toxic from a really excellent household hazardous waste and commercial waste, hazardous waste programs. And also, the more we remove materials by source separation and keep them in the material stream, it means that there will be less traffic, less number of trucks going to the landfill. And then on top of that, I think the next thing is a very fair host community benefit program. But when I made this slide, the UCRA was paying $8 to $9 million a year. It's now up to $9 to $10 million a year, and well over almost 500 miles, 467 miles. So I think that reducing that is going to make a huge difference. This is the trip from Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency to Seneca Meadows. And it's a 3-hour and 30-minute drive 2 ways. And it ends up, as I said, costing now closer to $10 million. And in terms of greenhouse gases, there is about 10,000 grams per gallon of CO2 per gallon of diesel. And it ends up being, over the course of a year, 10,000 metric tons of CO2 or equivalent. And, we can and must do better. So I want to just acknowledge, by way of the League of Women Voters, some people may remember Shirley Cobran and Elizabeth Askew, who were two of the people that were my mentors in the league, figuring out how to start and implement recycling programs. And I also want to give credit to Toshi Seeger, Pete's wife, who had the vision to start recycling and then a few years later start composting at Revival. And I brought that information and that know-how that Toshi had the vision to implement to Ulster County and the Ulster County Fair. And at one point, our waste diversion rate at the Ulster County Fair was 73%. And we were written up in Biocycle magazine because we were doing recycling and very effective composting. We're trying to bring that back now. But these are some of the things that we are trying to do. I'd really like Ulster County to be able to model approaching zero waste, finish that zero waste implementation plan. And I'm absolutely thrilled that Shabazz and Josephine of Greenway are going to model that, excuse me, in town of Hurley, which is an ideal model because it's not extremely rural, although it does have rural areas, but it also has clustered population. And it's between Kingston and the southwest corridor, a very excellent pilot project. So we're looking forward to seeing the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Manna. Very, very much. And thank you, Dave, for that comment 25 minutes ago. My friend Michael Whitman from Thousand Oaks, California. Incredible composting system where he's perforated pipes under his compost bin, fan every 3 minutes. And then, of course, and Dave was living in the People's Republic of Berkeley there for a while. And I think last Tuesday, Dave posted something about urban ore. And of course, Neil Seldman's been telling me and everybody else about urban ore and Dan Knapp for many years. Laura Foreman wants a copy of each presentation. Email them to her email address there. Alameda County, Dave says, and California mixes unpainted sheetrock with yard waste and grinds it into their composting piles. Cool. Manna, thank you so much for that. It's interesting because I think we all agree that the best paradigm, the goal is zero waste or 80-90% and tons of recycling and composting and not landfilling or incineration. I know Mike Ewall on the Energy Justice Network, if you go to energyjustice.net, he's crunched the numbers. He's figured out that, landfills are bad, but compared to incineration, landfills are way better. So there definitely is environmental impact with both of them, but Manna's nodding her head up and down. All right, so I think Manna, Manna, could you make Neil the host so he could do his talk? And we're gonna, Neil, are you there?
Wait, participants?
Please, Joel, don't make me the host because I'm sure I will screw it up. And before you do anything, I would like to add to one thing about Manna's presentation, and it's very profound. All of that work, it wasn't easy. We all know what citizen organizing is, but she used the phrase that because the consultants knew how strong they were, they didn't even try to build an incinerator, and therefore they escaped that battle. But the positive side of that is they had the time and the energy to move forward. So in these 19, 20 years over the development of all this terrific grassroots stimulated stuff in Ulster County, think of where Dutchess County and Westchester County could be if they had better advice and avoided the incinerator. So you avoided the incinerator and you made a path to zero waste. And while I use that phrase, a path to zero waste, let me say that the path to zero waste is paved by small businesses and many, many small citizen meetings. And that's what we witnessed in Ulster County. And unfortunately, we did not witness it in either Dutchess or Westchester. And of course, across the country, there's still about 30, 35 of these things going. Mike would know for sure.
Amen. So, Manna, could you make me the host, and then I can make, after Neil's done, I can make Mike the host if he wants to do his presentation. Mike, you don't have to, but for the last few weeks, I think Mike's had a ton of slides, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't want to.
Mike, if Mike wants to go for now, time constraints, it's fine.
No. I'm after. I wanted Mike to go after you. But if Manna, could you make the host?
I did.
Okay, awesome. All right. Sorry. All right. So I'm going to try to spotlight for everybody. All right. There you go. Hit it, Neil. You're on.
Okay. Well, this is very apropos, personally and professionally. Personally, it's I've always said that my career was I had a great time because I spent my time with community organizers and small business people. And here we have 15 or so community activists and small business people. So it's very nice. And Joel always makes everybody feel comfortable and welcome. So it's nice to be here. I am literally going to give you a presentation geared to Dutchess County that I will be giving in September sometime in Minneapolis. The citizens there are battling an incinerator. In fact, Mike is part of that team as well, Mike Ewall. It really is terrific to follow Manna's presentation, showing what positive things can happen. And what the citizens in Minneapolis asked me to do was to paint a picture of what the local economy might look like if zero waste took over. As we know, zero waste doesn't take over. You have to organize for it. What I'm saying here, we'll say to the folks in Minneapolis, is the same message, because you're in the same situation trying to shut down one of these burners. And I adjusted these numbers for the Poughkeepsie population. The first factor is that you would have in the local economy, you would have combined small recycling, composting, and reuse businesses that could create at least 250 to 300 jobs. In Minneapolis, that number was 1,000 because they're much bigger than you guys, population-wise. Very, very brief description: building deconstruction, at least 100 jobs, and materials sale after you deconstruct the building. All you need is one simple ordinance making it mandatory, as they're doing in other places, and you get these incredible jobs. Go on your internet to Second Chance Baltimore, all developed. It's 250, 300 guys doing deconstruction all over the Eastern Seaboard, and it's an incredible success socially as well as economically. Electronic scrap repair and recycling, it's just bubbling up all over the country. And let me say something about repair and resale. A lot of people in this country need reskilling. Many don't have very few industrial skills. By teaching people how to deconstruct and repair buildings, computers, appliances, mattresses, you give skills that not only get people good jobs, meaning family wage benefits and wages, but you create new personalities, quite literally. And that's what these businesses do. And one proof of the pudding is this. We all know that the recidivism, the rate at which people get incarcerated and come out, meaning they go back again in, I think it's between 3 and 5 years, I don't know, is astronomically high, 75% These businesses, they're real businesses. They have reduced, Indianapolis Recycle Force has reduced recidivism down to 13%. And one company in Baltimore, not Second Chance, but I'll think of the name of it. Harmonium, I think it's called. I apologize. They had 3 years with absolutely no recidivism from their workers who were incarcerated. And that, you can only imagine the economic and social cost. Okay, we have mattress, like all this stuff is going on. So you would have these small businesses. Now we can talk about Poughkeepsie because you have similar small businesses. Perhaps I don't know the landscape. You certainly have your composting going on, as we heard a few minutes ago. But all of these other businesses have a very small economy of scale, meaning they don't need 1 million people to support them. They need a couple of 100,000, which is where Dutchess County is. And certainly if you put Dutchess, Westchester, and what's the other county? There's a third county nearby. You have forgive me, I don't quite remember the map that well, but the bottom line is you have an economy of scale that all of these, in fact, there would be, just as you need multiple composting companies, you need multiple electronic scrap and so forth. On the, this is so much fun about these things. St. Vincent de Paul, the group has textile recycling. They actually hired a fashion designer, and they get all these old clothes and have a new line of clothing. So the ingenuity is remarkable. Now, the next part, I was going to talk about the local institutions in Minneapolis, which are already there. Eureka, great recycling company, community-based. Repowered is a company, nonprofit, that collects electronic scrap from your house, and they repair it and sell it, and also recycle what they can. And then there's more and more reuse stores. So all of these things are around. It's so wonderful to see that John Waxman, is going to get that center named after him. He was quite a nice person and certainly made great contributions to the reuse networks in the last 10, 15 years. Now, the last part of my comment that I was going to give in Minneapolis was if you want all these businesses, these sprouting businesses that pay good wages, and many of them are community owned, such as the Bridgeport, Connecticut mattress factory, which is a perfect example of what can happen. They've got about 30, 35 workers. It's at least 10, 15 years old. St. Vincent de Paul was instrumental in sharing their technology and knowledge with those folks, and that's what we're all about, harmony, diversity, but harmony within that diversity, or the diversity within the harmony. So what new rules does Dutchess County have to implement to really move towards zero waste? And I have to start with composting, because if you want to kill an incinerator, you have to manage the organics. It's 40% combined, all organics. And in Minneapolis, for technical reasons that I could go into when I get up there and we have meetings, and also in the other city, in Montgomery County, Maryland, shutting the plant down is based upon knowing how to manage the organics. I could go into detail, but I don't need to at this point. The corollary of managing your organics is that the first important step to zero waste is to shut your incinerator as soon as possible. And Mike will certainly address that. The reason is that if you don't shut it, all the resources, all the public resources that should be moving in the direction that Manna has helped them move are spent, whatever, keeping the incinerator going. Having said that, here are the rules that you should implement. You kill the incinerator, you show them where you're going to send the trash to landfills. Mike and I can explain that in detail later. But the key is that as you're implementing zero waste, your waste stream is changing. As you start getting those organics, the wet stuff that causes the methane emissions and the gooey called leachate that contaminates water, all costs a fortune to manage, disappears, because that's where the water is and that's where the organics are. You keep those out, and that's why if you want to cool the planet, you don't dispose of organics by destroying them in landfills or incinerators. You need them; they're precious. Okay, what else do you have to do? You have to have unit pricing, pay as you throw. You pay for your gas on, gas per mile. You pay for your garbage per mile. You do that, and people start recycling and composting. There have been 40% increase in recycling within 1 year in cities that use unit pricing. It's all documented, and there are models and contracts and so forth. Then you have shared savings. This has been pioneered all across the country, but most spectacularly in Urban Ore in California. They have 5 or 6 guys, trained crew, who are at the garbage transfer station when all the commercial and residential waste is being sent to landfill, long way away, 40 miles. And they have the right to pick out, they're trained on how to do this safely, pick out reusables and recyclables. They're getting, about 10 tons a day of stuff. And they are getting paid the exact same fee that the landfill would be getting paid, $41 and change. And it's a bargain for the city because the city doesn't have to transport that material that's recovered. So the city gets a small bargain, but the 41 per change per ton is the cash flow for an incredible business that has 35, 40 workers. And it's just an iconic organization, Urban Ore in Berkeley. So that's what shared savings is, and you can apply it to composting. If a community composts and each household, 15% of their waste is organic matter. If the community composts and every house composts, they should be a share of what it costs to collect and dispose of garbage, which is probably about $200-300 a ton. So 10%, give the community $30 a ton for every a ton of organics they compost, and that feeds. It's the the juice that keeps a local company going. Another thing, get your economic development person to stick his nose in the landfill, and he won't like what he smells, and then you'll say, okay, then do this. And what you need him to do is put together a pooled bond program for small businesses. One bond for this plant, one bond for that plant. But we want $10 or $15 million bond for low interest loans and grants to small businesses, composting businesses, reuse businesses, etc. And there's a model for this. The organization is called Stop Waste. It's a public organization. It's an agency, of Alameda County, California, the county where Oakland and Berkeley is. And for the last 20, 30 years, they've been collecting fees. I'll go into that at another time, how they did it. But they have about $10 million a year, and they invested in small businesses, government programs, nonprofit programs. They give grants, loans, low interest loans, and technical assistance. And then on a larger scale, you work with the state to develop an identical program for resource recovery parks and reuse centers. Reuse centers are exactly what Manna has in mind, and they're ready to go. I believe she said they're putting out their RFP. I'm going to follow that very closely because these designs are quite sensational. I work with designers too. I hire Dan Knapp and Mary Lou Vandeventer from Urban Ore. They have an architectural side, and they've been working as consultants to us on our projects where we're helping redesign. We're giving advice to DC on how to redesign their stations, but we were actually working for the county to give them specific designs for the resource recovery park. It's going to be it's complicated. It'll be a renovation of Shady Grove or some expansion. And finally, as I said before, the last rule would be, there are other rules, but these are the most dominant that you need. And certainly if you get these done, you're on your way. And that is a deconstruction ordinance. Baltimore has one. Several other cities have them. Baltimore is a bill, but there are ordinances passed in other communities. Any building that was built before 1970, if you want to take it down, you have to deconstruct it first. You may need a backup company to handle foundations, etc. But to give you a sense of how important this is, Second Chance in Baltimore, they started with 6 deconstruction workers. Now deconstruction teams plus retail sales, they have 250, 300 workers. And the bill, Odette Ramos, the city council person, has a bill up, the mandatory deconstruction bill. It has a better name than that. And Mark Foster, who heads up Second Chance, I asked him if the bill passes, how many more workers? And he said he would need to double his operation, go from 250 to 500. You can extrapolate that to Poughkeepsie, to 25 to maybe 75 jobs. And I want to say that these jobs change people's lives, and I can document that. I was a deconstruction contractor for HUD, and can show you the results, the incredible results. So that's what I was going to say to Minneapolis. So I'm going to say it to you folks. And the wonderful thing is that you all know all this instinctually because you're activists and entrepreneurs, and you know the basic lesson of garbage is keep it separate, stupid. If you mix it up, you have garbage and you have to pay a fortune and you pollute your neighborhood. If you keep it separate, you have materials that can be processed, baled, sold, made into new things. And that's the art of zero waste and local self-reliance. Keep things separate, use your resources as the wonderful models we have from around the country.
Neil, thank you. Brilliant as always. I don't know if anybody could tell I was having World War V with our 4-year-old here. She was. I don't know if anybody could tell the video was kind of going off and on, and it's a long story. But thank you, Neil. Brilliant as always.
It's a pleasure to be amongst you all. Thank you.
And we still have Mike Ewall here. Mike, did you want to talk for a bit, or no, or yes, or?
Yeah, let me just do something quick and then let's get to some Q&A, because I'm sure folks have been on here for a while would like to have it more interactive.
Do you want to do some screen sharing, or?
Yeah, please. If you just hit the shield symbol at the bottom and enable participant screen sharing, that should do it.
Security and enable. I know you sent that to me. Should enable. The heck? Maybe I request. I don't have that. I'm just going to make you the host. All right, you're the host.
Okay, so hi everyone. I met some of you last week, other times, but for those of you who are new, good to meet you. My name is Mike Ewall, and I've been involved in fighting incinerators since I was in high school in 1991.
Hold on one second. Could you take? I'm sorry, Mike. Could you take Neil out of the spotlight and put yourself in the spotlight, or at least just take him out of the? I put him in the spotlight, and then you're the speaker now. So,
okay.
Hey, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Spotlight. So if I know how. Okay, I'm not sure how to do that, but if y'all want to pin me, go for it. So I've been involved for over 30 years. Fighting this trash incinerator industry. My first incinerator I fought was the same company that's in Dutchess County, Wheelabrator. They got kicked out of my township, but got built a few townships away, and is now the biggest air polluter in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I now live in Philadelphia, and I'm surrounded by the worst cluster of trash incinerators in the country. There are 5 of them circling the city here. So whichever way the wind blows, I'm breathing someone's trash. And it's a big part of the reason why Philadelphia is one of the worst places of all big cities for cancer and asthma. Considering that these 5 incinerators circling us are among the top 7 industrial air polluters in the 7-county Philadelphia area. So it's not unusual to see that they're the largest air polluters in a certain county. Wheelabrator, well, the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Facility run by Wheelabrator is the largest air polluter in Dutchess County. The Wheelabrator incinerator in Peekskill, New York, is the largest air polluter in Westchester County. The Wheelabrator trash incinerator in Hudson Falls, New York, is the largest air polluter in this county as well. So that is not an unusual thing as we study this across the country. So I've been working with communities all over the country, from New England to Florida to Hawaii to Oregon, literally working with all those places in the past year, and working to take down this industry, because having studied it, I've learned that this specific industry is the most expensive and polluting way we can manage waste or make energy. They're dirtier than coal plants, they're worse than landfills, and I'm going to share a few slides on that now. So let me get my screen sharing down. Let me make sure it's on the screen first. Okay, so this is just an excerpt from a much larger PowerPoint presentation I have that can easily go over an hour. We're not going to do that now because you've got anything that you want to get back to. But just some of the key slides from it I want to share. This just shows what the health studies say about where they found increases in certain diseases around incinerators. The industry loves to say that the studies show no health problems, don't worry, be happy, and yet they're ignoring those studies that do find health problems. And it's hard to find these kinds of problems in a study because pollution moves, people move. There are a lot of reasons why it's hard for a study to find this. But when they do, it's important to understand what we're talking about. And a lot of it is cancers of all sorts and respiratory, cardiovascular diseases as well. Now, when we talk about how dirty they are, everyone knows that coal is basically the dirtiest thing out there. Most people don't realize that trash incineration is even worse. And when we've used the most recent available data from the EPA, and there is now newer data from 2020 that we can redo this with, but our latest analysis was done in the past year before that came out. So it's 2018 data. And this is from EPA's National Emissions Inventory. And what we found is that for a lot of the pollutants, it's actually much more polluting per unit of energy. So if they're the same size as a coal plant, putting out the same amount of energy, you get a lot more pollution from burning trash than you do from burning coal. And that's even though they have more pollution control devices on them than coal power plants tend to, because they're newer facilities, even though newer means usually about 20, 30 some years old at this point. Now, bringing it closer to home, New York's DEC did the same sort of analysis back in 2011 and found that the 8 coal plants in the state that are all now shut down were not nearly as polluting as the 10 much smaller like they were smaller facilities, but the 10 trash incinerators that are all still operating, including the one in Dutchess County. And these are the comparisons they found. Sulfur dioxide coal was worse, but all the other ones, incineration was more polluting per unit of energy. And mercury, 14 times worse than coal per unit of energy. So even if you don't adjust for the size, and the coal plants are much bigger facilities, there was still more mercury coming out from the 10 incinerators in the state that are all still running than the 8 coal plants combined that were running at the time but are shut down now. So when we looked at this in terms of just carbon dioxide, because a lot of people are very focused only on climate, those people are not very aware that trash incineration is 65% worse than coal for the climate even. And a lot of that is what they call biogenic carbon. And so the industry likes to play some games and they say, well, that part doesn't count. We just cross that out at the very beginning. And then they make all these subtractions and assumptions that in some analyses, the incinerator industry actually pretends that they're carbon negative. They like to subtract the landfills as well as any displaced energy facilities. And they like to assume that they're displacing fossil fuel power plants. So they do a lot of accounting tricks to make themselves look like a climate solution when the actual raw amount of pollution coming out of the smokestack is a lot worse than coal power plants. Pamela, you are drawing on the screen. If you can not do that, that would be awesome. Thank you. So the comparisons to landfills are the real issue because these are not facilities that are being built for energy production. They're being built for waste disposal, and they're being kept and held onto for waste disposal reasons. And when we analyze this in terms of the cost to health and environment from the pollutants coming out of incinerators and including the ash going to a landfill, you still have landfills when you use an incinerator. You compare that to the landfills and you find that they're far worse. This is a study that was done that used the most comprehensive life cycle analysis tool available, looking at 9 different criteria. Blue is global warming, so you can see for that, it's worse than landfills, even though landfills are quite bad for global warming. Even counting methane and how dangerous that is over the short term, which the study did, incinerators still come out about twice as big as landfilling in this scenario. And when you add in the particulate matter that causes heart attacks and strokes, and the smog formation, the nitrogen oxides that trigger asthma attacks, and the toxic chemicals that contribute to birth defects and other diseases, and then cancers and other things layered on top of that, you're looking at about 3 times worse, a little bit more than 3 times in that study from Montgomery County, Maryland, where they're working to get away from one of the newest incinerators in the country, which is now pushing 30 years old. That study also found that transportation is a very small fraction of.
Wait, okay, the meeting's almost done. That's why we got the iPad here, Popo.
Busto.
Okay, Joe, you're on mute now. The transportation component of it. So red is the incinerator in Montgomery County, Maryland. Yellow are the landfills that we studied for it. And the bars on top are the transportation. Blue is if it's by truck, black is if it's by rail, because some facilities are accessible by rail, but not many. And you can see that the amount of, this is just for global warming, but if you look at other metrics, you find the same trend, that the contribution of transportation is very small. And that's even though the landfills are much further away than the incinerator that's within the county of Montgomery County, Maryland. So yes, you do have additional transportation impacts. You can see the black bar here is a little thinner than the other ones, but it doesn't justify saying, oh, we'll burn it in county because that's better for the climate than diesel trucks driving all the way out to rural Pennsylvania. It's actually not able to overcome the difference because incineration is that much worse. Now, the latest study that's not fully out yet, so this is not supposed to be shared, is pre-circulation draft, but it is public. It was shared with public committees. So I'll just give you a little preview here. This is for Delaware County, Pennsylvania, which is close to me in Philadelphia. This is where a lot of Philadelphia's trash gets burned, in the city of Chester, at the largest trash incinerator in the country. And depending on iPads, hopefully they're a real person. So the landfill that they currently send incinerators ash to, you can see most of the impacts are the blue, which is the carbon dioxide and methane, the global warming impacts. But when you compare it to incineration, whether you let them subtract some things like displacing natural gas power plants and counting the metals they recycle from the ash, then it's this bad. But if you don't count the displaced damage elsewhere, the actual community impacts are this high. But even if you give them some of those subtractions, they're still worse for the climate and in general than bringing it to the landfill directly. And this is what the best science really shows on this. Right here, well, actually 2 more slides. So when we looked at the impacts in that same study for Delaware County, Pennsylvania, of the recycling and reuse and composting that they're doing, the zero waste approaches, currently they're having this much of an impact across all these different impacts. They're reducing particulate matter and toxic chemicals and eutrophication, like nitrogen in ecosystems. And they're doing this because that recycling is preventing having to mine new materials, ship them around the world, have them manufactured in China or other places where labor is cheap, ship them to the US. All those impacts from the recycling that we're already doing comes out to $399 per ton of waste that we're not producing in Delaware County currently. Now, if the county implements their zero waste plan that is being developed for them, then you get a much greater benefit. But the harm that's happening, the $104 per ton of waste that is incinerated currently, is causing this much damage. And if they implement the zero waste plan, which is switching to landfill instead of incinerating first and then sending ash to landfill, but also reducing the waste a lot, then the impact's cut from 104 down to $16. So 85% reduction in the harm from waste disposal by implementing a zero waste plan, the key component of which, or one of the key components, is ending incineration. And on that transportation point, again, this newer study is showing the same general point, that if you look at the incineration, the use of the incinerator in Chester, Pennsylvania, you have this yellow line, which is the hauling. Of course, the collection trucks have to run anyway, so they're the same. But the hauling distance from the transfer stations to the incinerator is a tiny, tiny fraction of the impacts from the incineration system. But when you look at hauling further, you see that yellow line is thicker, but it's still nothing compared to the impacts of the landfill itself. And these three bars are just what percent of the landfill gas they're capturing. Of course, if you don't capture any, it's almost as bad as burning it. But that's also a pretty striking point, that even if you don't capture any of the landfill gas, it's still better to put it in a landfill than to burn it and put all that carbon immediately into the air. So last few things here. This is EPA's waste hierarchy that they use, that has been mimicked by your state government, by local governments in many places. We've challenged this and gotten EPA to add a disclaimer that doesn't fit on this page. Sorry, I didn't need to fix the font size here. But if you look this up on EPA's website, every place it appears, there's now a disclaimer under it for over a year. They put it up July of last year because we asked them to. And this came as a result of them admitting to us that they have zero documentation to back up their placement of incineration, which they call energy recovery, which is a misnomer. It's actually destroying embodied energy in materials. We call it waste of energy facilities. But they pretend that incineration is better than landfilling, and they don't have any data to back that up. And that's why the studies that we're looking at that I just showed you is important information that we'll be getting to EPA so they can reconsider this. And they have to fix some of their outdated models that show that replicate these biases, which is part of the problem. But the zero waste hierarchy, by contrast, this is something I developed that's now used as an international standard, makes it very clear that incineration is unacceptable. I used to keep it off of the hierarchy altogether, but folks at Zero Waste International Alliance were like, no, Mike, make it visible. So it's now in the red at the bottom. It's clearly unacceptable. And the backstop in orange is landfilling after we do all the upstream steps, including back-end processing, to make sure that's a stabilized residual that's going to the landfill. It's not going to be gassy and stinky in that landfill because of the pre-processing. So there's a lot more information you can get on this website here, energyjustice.net. This is a lot of resources that I put together at the top of that page. So take that down, and maybe relocating that information soon. So we'll let you know where you can find the latest stuff as it comes out. Let's leave it there. And if folks have questions, anything about the process of what's coming up, maybe Joel can say what's happening soon in terms of public meetings. And then if folks want to talk about what can be done about it all beyond that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mike. Mike Ewall, founder, director of the Energy Justice Network. Could you make me the host again?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
That's all right. Oh, thank you. A bunch of things before we go to Q&A, and Q&A is really crucial and important. Neil Seldman emailed me last night about Mike, you were just before we get to Q&A stuff I wanted to say, you were just the trade press just interviewed you on this issue, and I cannot emphasize how important this is, what he's talking about, as far as the DEC hides behind the EPA analysis of this, because I don't know if he's still around or not. Bill Calogero, he doesn't run the Resource Recovery Agency for Dutchess County anymore, I don't think. But I do know that for decades, the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency and the people running Dutchess County have hidden behind the DEC and the EPA as far as saying, well, hey, You know, there's a lot of Democratic administrations, a lot of Democratic governors up in Albany, and of course it's Joe Biden's EPA now. And you know, hey, you know that, so they're saying that, you know, landfilling is worse than incineration. So it's not just an academic point. Even the article that Liam Mayo, who's a stringer for the Albany Times-Union, wrote and got published for the Albany Times-Union a few weeks ago, that article once again repeats this fallacy, this lie, that this misinformation that the power structure is hidden behind, that incineration is better than landfilling environmentally. So it's really super important. There's a bunch of other points I wanted to make really quickly before we get to Q&A. But Mike, did you want to talk about that trade? I mean, in both the interview that you did recently?
Yeah, I just dropped a link in the chat. That was actually last year that came out, so it wasn't so recent, but it was still pretty important that we got some attention on it, because EPA has a number of policies that we flagged that are pro-incinerator, including their life cycle assessment tools on global warming impacts of waste systems. There are some systematic biases in it. The waste hierarchy is biased, just a number of things are. So we had 274 groups. This was back in October 2022. Sign on in support of a letter I wrote to the White House Council on Environmental Quality. I dropped that in the chat as well. And one of the things that we called on in there, in addition to the things I was just describing, was for them to make incinerators have to start reporting for the first time to the toxics release inventory, because there are a lot of articles that come out in the news, analyses and reports and maps that get made on what toxic emissions there are from industry. And incinerator emissions are always invisible in that, because this industry has been exempt from reporting since that database started in 1987. And yet in most places, they're the largest or one of the largest air polluters for toxic chemicals. And you just would think that they don't exist because they don't have to report.
Thank you. And I was trying to copy and paste the chat, all these wonderful comments, all this information. I was trying to copy and paste it into an email to myself, multitasking while I'm listening to you. And I know there's some way to preserve the chat, but I wasn't able to access last time. Anyway, some very important numbers, courtesy of Mike. I don't know where to go on the internet, how to get these from the DEC. Maybe Mike foiled them, but 100,000 tons of global warming pollution, carbon dioxide equivalents, that's what comes out of the Dutchess County incinerator each year. 100,000 tons. So I'm here in Portland, Oregon. I'm trying to reach out to CAC folks and, you know, professors and, you know, college students, whatever, Sunrise Movement. But I'm hoping and praying that maybe at some point in the next 7 days, you folks who live in Dutchess County can possibly kind of nudge your neighbors that this is a climate issue. This is a climate change issue. Aside from the fact that 7 pounds of mercury comes out of that thing each year. Now you could say 7 pounds of mercury, what's that? Well, according to Mike, and I believe him, and I guess it was a state of Minnesota or some University of Minnesota Department of the Environment did a study that that's 7 pounds of mercury is enough to contaminate and poison 60,000 lakes. 60,000 lakes. And so when I'm trying to talk to people, you know, that mercury doesn't stay in Poughkeepsie. It goes all over the Hudson Valley.
Minor point on that, Joe, just so folks are clear. So these are 20-acre lakes that they modeled. Of course, Minnesota's got a lot of small lakes, so maybe that's why they picked that size. But if that amount of mercury is falling out on a lake year after year, and this is an annual thing, just 1 gram, so the amount of the fever thermometer is enough to cause a 20-acre lake to have enough mercury in it that the fish are unsafe to eat. And so that times this amount of pounds coming out of the Dutchess County incinerator, we're talking about thousands of lakes of that size having the fish too contaminated to safely eat.
And you know, there's lead, there's chromium, there's all sorts of other arsenic and other crap. JP Ferraro and his radio station WHVW 950 AM for about a decade or so let me have a Saturday morning show. Dave's been on it a whole bunch. Many people on this Zoom call have called in on Saturday mornings when I hosted it. I just happened to call JP this afternoon. I wanted him to be part of the call. And he put me on the air. I'm sitting in my car during my lunch break, getting my classroom ready, teaching in the fall. And he put me on the air, interviewing me for 10 minutes. And of course, he came up with the arsenic and old lace, right? You know, that film, that black and white film, I don't know how many years, decades ago. Mm-hmm. But people don't know. And the media is not telling people how truly polluting that thing is. WHPW is. I'm living here thousands of miles away. I'm going to do my part to try to get a letter to the editor emailed off this Thursday or Friday. A lot of these weekly publications have Friday deadlines. So I'm going to do what I can. I have no guarantee they're going to publish mine, but you guys live there. Feel free to write a letter to the editor too, because I served in the county legislature for about 15, 16 years there. I know that the first Thursday of each month and the schedule for county legislature meetings is right on their website. So September 7th are the committee meetings for the Dutchess County Legislature, and 911, September 11th, everybody remembers how Christy Todd Whitman and so many folks in the power structure ignored how poisonous and contaminating from the September 11th, 2001, right? Those contaminants. Well, we have a 911 happening in a couple of weeks in Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County. Feel free to draw that comparison. That's going to be the full board meeting. Monday, September 11th, 911, all 25 county legislators in Dutchess County are going to vote on the SWMP, the SWMP, the proposed solid waste management plan for Dutchess County, which continues incineration, unfortunately. I don't know if I want to take the time on this call to reread or hit the high points of what Brenda Platt did, but it's super. I cannot emphasize to you, if anybody's still on this call after the Q&A, I'm going to at least hit the high points of what she did, because according to the Albany Times-Union, and their coverage is probably going to be more critical than the other media coverage, I'm guessing, that happens over the next month on this issue. The Albany Times-Union article, half of it is all about how great it is that the power structure in Dutchess County, they're for composting. They're going to do composting, right? Of course, Shabazz, Jackson, and I were part of the Green Ribbon Solid Waste Management Task Force back in 2009, 2010. We were saying back then, I mean, I stole this idea. I borrowed this idea from Shabazz. Shabazz was like, there needs to be 4 or 5, regional food waste composting facilities all around the county. This is 2023. That was back in 2010 or 2009, 2010 that we issued those recommendations that they never followed up on. And Brenda Platt from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance actually read the proposed solid waste management plan for Dutchess County. She read it, and boom, 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 point by point analysis points out that they're full of it, basically. And she's like, Joel, why did you have to use the L word? Because she emailed me her notes, and she basically, so I changed it to misinformation, but they're totally obfuscating, and they're not serious about composting. All right. And so it's because that's going to be the mantra. I will bet any amount of money that the media in Dutchess County is going to cover this the same way that the Albany Times-Union already covered it a few weeks ago, that, well, not only is, they got to keep on the incinerator going, but, oh, hey, we're serious about composting. And Brenda Platt's analysis makes it clear that they're not. So I'm going to shut up on that. I really want to give a chance for Lisa Call to talk more, and Matthew Carroll didn't get a chance to say anything yet. Doreen Tignanelli, Gina Klein. We actually have had Matthew Carroll, Lisa Call, and Gina Klein, and Laura Foreman had to go. We have 4 people now or have been on this call from the Dutchess County Progressive Action Alliance, and of course, Dave is a charter member as well. Go ahead, Manna.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One is cumulative effects. The Hudson River is plagued with PCB contamination, PFAS, including radioactive isotopes that have leaked from Indian Point or been discharged, even if we prevent the impending release by a new law that was just passed. But environmental justice and cumulative effects are on people's radar, where when we started this 30 years ago or so, that wasn't the case. And I think the fact that people eat fish from the Hudson River, sometimes for subsistence, these are really important points, as well as Danny Einbender says, if you're going to burn it, you know you're going to breathe it. So I just wanted to also ask, I have a list of people that participated in Jobs Not Jails in Poughkeepsie, and other lists of people I could send something to, but I would need a description with key points, preferably not more than 1 page. So I wonder if we could request that and help get the word out.
I'm all over it. I will do that. And Mike corrected me. I need to apologize. My misinformation. I think I said 60,000 lakes. Well, 3,000 20-acre lakes is still quite a bit. You want to play? You want to say hi to everybody or no? I thought she wanted to say hi. She wants to play with me. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. I don't want to let other people talk. So it's not 60,000 lakes. The 7 pounds of mercury that comes out of the incinerator in Poughkeepsie, run by Dutchess County each year. 5 years ago, that's the most recent numbers. That's 3.175 grams. So we're talking about, actually, no, that's 3,175 grams. So that's over 3,000 20-acre lakes with fish becoming too contaminated to safely eat. I'll play with you in a second. A couple other things really briefly. My mom is stuck on this $3 million. Mike, if you could confirm it, I think it's $3 million that the taxpayers of Dutchess County spend each year that we pay to get the ash taken care of. And the other thing is $14 million. The Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency budget last December, their meeting, it looks like other expenses was $14 million. I'm guessing and betting that $14 million is dealing with the ash and dealing with the incinerator, that $14 million is basically going to Wheelabrator, or maybe 11 million is going to Wheelabrator and 3 million is going to disposal of the ash. But I've asked that question multiple times to Dutchess County legislators and to the Resource Recovery Agency. Nobody wants to answer. So one good thing, because Mike opened my brain a year or so ago on this, because what's been happening is it used to be that the Resource Recovery Agency was a big line in the county budget, and then it was zeroed out. It was netted out. And then recently, there was a surplus of $1.1 million the last 2 years, but not this past year. And so why is it all of a sudden costing $1 million more? Well, nobody's answered that question. And how much of that actually goes to Wheelabrator? Because the people who work at the incinerator aren't doing it for free. You know, it's so simple and common sense, right? But I never thought of it like that, because Molinaro and the power structures brainwashed us into thinking that, hey, there's no problem, it's revenue neutral. It's so anyway, but let me be quiet and let other people talk.
This 14 million a year they're spending on the incinerator. And
it's $14 million for other expenses. And I'm guessing and betting nobody wants to answer the question, but from the Resource Recovery Agency. But I posed it to the county executive, the county legislature, the Resource Recovery Agency. Lindsay Carrill is not the solid waste commissioner anymore. I think it's Kerry Russell. I may have that name wrong. Nobody wants to answer it. And I've asked them multiple times. Of course, I don't live in Dutchess County, but they owe you a response. And Robin Lois, who's done an amazing, fantastic, incredible job as Dutchess County Controller. She's done a great job as far as audits and reports, and really, you know, being a watchdog for the taxpayers. The county contracts are now online, something I pushed for years. She's audited just about every single department in Dutchess County, and she's audited the Dutchess County Controller. Robin Lois has also audited a whole bunch of nonprofit agencies in Dutchess County. She has never audited the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency. And so this is one thing I've sort of gently suggested. It would be really worth her while, but at least if the Resource Recovery Agency doesn't want to answer your questions, you guys in Dutchess County should be able to ask Rob and Lois, hey, that $14 million for other expenses, well, what's the breakdown there? How much is Wheelabrator getting for that?
That 14 million divided into about how many tons they are able to burn per year and likely to actually be burning comes out to about $94 a ton, which is pretty high. And it's so high for New York. Prices are getting that high, but still that's up there. And landfilling is generally going to be cheaper than that. But if that's just part of the cost of this, and given that such a small plant, it can't be very economical. I bet the costs are probably well over 100 a ton, if that's not the full picture. So I think looking into the finances of this could be its undoing if folks really dig into that.
I'll find the link and I'll send it. But if you go right to it was the December report about the 2022 budget. All right, I'm going to be quiet and let other people talk. Sequoia says she doesn't want other people to talk, but don't let her stop you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting's going for a couple hours, honey.
All right.
I raised my hand. Can I talk?
Yes, please.
I was aware that the process of funding or renewing the contract with Wheelabrator was about to happen. However, it has not been something that has been high on my list of priorities. And I'm very happy that I sat in on this presentation tonight. The decision that's going to be voted on in essentially a week or two, it seems to me that at this point in time, it's going to be nigh on to impossible to stop this avalanche that's coming down the mountain. There's just no time. So I'd appreciate any comments you have regarding that.
Yeah, just dropped a little bit in the chat in response to Doreen's point that the permit expires in 2025. I assume you're talking about the waste or the air permit at the state level. That, Joe, you're on mute, you're talking. But Joe, do you want to say something or should I continue my point?
Real quick, the contract, Mike, you found that the Wheelabrator contract with the RRA expires in 2027, but I think Doreen is probably correct on that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably a state permit she's talking about because that's different than a contract. But there will be county contracts for Wheelabrator to be running the facility and also contracts for the county and its municipalities to be feeding waste to it. And if that's 2027, then that's a decent time frame to target to try to get those contracts stopped. But there are other options. So even though certain options are more difficult, especially ones at the state level, there are a lot more levels you can be attacking at the county level with the finances and with the contracts, and even at the municipal level with the contracts that feed waste from throughout the county, if there are municipal contracts that are feeding into that county system. And also in the town of Poughkeepsie, they have the power to regulate the facility directly. The county does also, but they own it, so they're less likely to do that. But if you have the right people in running the town of Poughkeepsie, I'd be glad to write the law that they can pass that could put the screws to the operator.
I would like to address Gina's question of what can you do, but I'm going to take my lead from Mike pointing out that there are many other barriers or that places to stop this. And of course, as Mike pointed out, the further it goes, the harder it gets. But nonetheless, it's a long-term thing is what I'm trying to say. It's going to go beyond the next couple of elections. And this is an experience I was part of years ago in a small city in Massachusetts. And again, this was to prevent an incinerator, not to shut one down. And shutting one down is much more difficult. But it was a city council, and you had to have 2 votes to make it the law. And the first vote on a BFI, a big garbage company, proposal to build a 3,000 ton per day incinerator in that town, for which the town would get free disposal. The vote was 8-1 in favor of the incinerator. A week went by in which citizens started talking. It literally was 1 week, because by the second hearing of the bill, the vote was 9-0 against letting them build the incinerator. And the key was that the organizers had a campaign, and the campaign was based on, if you vote for this plant, I will never vote for you again, and my children will never vote for you again. And that was the threat that at that time worked there. Now, I don't know your community, and I don't know the personalities you're dealing with and your elected officials, but they need to be told through as many organizations and doctors and lawyers that you can muster, that this is a deal breaker, that this is such a bad decision that's going to not only tie the county to a lot of money that they don't need to spend, but literally it's going to be killing citizens, particularly the younger and older you are, the more vulnerable you are to all of this stuff that's in the air. And the particulates, there was just an article about how underestimated the impact of particulates are on our lives. Just came out a few days ago. I'll send people the article. But the point is that this is a real, I would say, deal breaker with any elected official. And you've got to let them know that. So I don't know if you can turn it around, but if you can't turn it around by, let's say, September 7th or whatever, there's a long way to go and there's help, of course, local help and organizations like Mike's and mine.
One more thing is that I think it was Joe Gerrio's campaign in 2007. He ran a very strong, not the only time he ran a strong campaign for county executive, but the Poughkeepsie Journal put it right on the front page. It was 16 years ago, but I remember it. Which county legislators voted for the well testing law, which voted against. Okay, this is for like in Rockland and Westchester and New Jersey, when properties change hands, that the water wells are tested for volatile organic chemicals. Now, the Poughkeepsie Journal chose to make that a spotlight issue. And so those legislators, a lot of those Republicans were punished that November. We got the first Democratic majority in the county legislature. And that's probably maybe the only reason why Neil was able to come to the 6th the county office.
That is a great local example, Joel, of how quickly organized citizens can have an impact.
We got the Democratic majority from the county legislature, I believe, largely because of that issue. Now, I labor under no illusion or delusion that I honestly, one of the biggest, I don't know if I or we are going to be able to change the minds of the majority in the county legislature right now, the Republicans. I'm really trying to empower and activate and educate and inform activists and the Democrats in the county legislature. And we're about to go out to ice cream and the candidates. So I can't impress how important it is, Lisa, call that you're here. And the fact that Ted Miller was so positive, the campaign manager for Tommy Zerhelen, the Democratic candidate for Dutchess County Executive, Ted participated in last Tuesday's Zoom. We're almost done, honey. We're almost done. And not only that, but it looks like Ted and Neil's going to be in Hudson Falls, Glens, whatever, in October.
We're organizing a meeting.
I'm going to mute myself. So it looks like the Tommy Zerhelen campaign is and so voters can be educated after the people who run the Dutchess County Legislature, after Republicans do the wrong thing, which they probably will, next Thursday, September 7th and September 11th. And even, I don't want to speak for Matthew Carroll, but Matthew was talking about, I would love to mobilize people to a rally like that, because it looks like, all right, so I'm going to mute myself and let somebody else talk.
Joe, let me just say about that last campaign. I remember when I was coming back and forth to the legislature legislature, the county government, that there were several Republicans who were our biggest supporters. I don't remember their names, but it was because we explained the financial risk, the bonding capacity of the city. And in fact, I told you that anecdote about the town in city in Massachusetts. The woman who organized that campaign was a Wall Street bond advisor. So she started calling all her friends, presumably they were rich because she was a Wall Street dealer, and explaining the risk of allowing this 3,000 ton per day thing to come in and using city municipal bonds. And that was perhaps the key to it. Rich people got pissed off. I don't know if that was the reason, but nonetheless, that was a very, the finances, financial risk of government money. Conservatives, real conservatives, don't want that. And in other battles, I remember the real estate industry in Texas came out against incineration because we pointed out that an incinerator would add to the tax and they would have to do a new sales tax, and the businesses, the real estate people revolted, and we knocked out a plant in Austin. So financial risk is a major theme that could get a lot of attention.
Thank you for that, Neil. I've been meaning to ask you or Mike or anybody who knows this, any elected officials who aren't Democrats all across the country, Republicans, conservatives, who I know you like to quote Edmund Burke, Neil, but who have come out against incineration. I think that would be golden information for people like Lisa and Tommy Zerhelen and Ted Miller and all of us to prove that, at the risk of sounding stupid, we're not communists, that this is just and the other point is, it was Rob Weiss, right? Sometimes there was rumors that he brought a gun strapped to his leg to the meetings. He like basically almost challenged me to fisticuffs in April of so Neil got on the phone with Rob Weiss and convinced him of the merit of an eco-industrial resource recovery park, because I think Rob had voted no at the environmental committee on it, and then all 25 legislators, the full board, voted for that zero waste resolution for Dutchess County to try to access federal stimulus funds for zero waste planning. One more thing I wanted to say before we go to somebody else. Richard Anthony, I think, Neil, you told me over a decade ago about Richard Anthony, and he did an analysis, I don't know how many counties and municipalities where you're breaking the waste stream into 10 or 12 different materials, and the value. Unfortunately, too much media has brainwashed people into thinking, well, you know, China's not taking our bad recycling, so it's really hard for people to recycle. Like in the town of Clinton, where my mom still lives, the transfer, it's just not. I mean, and Shabazz and Josephine give me hope for the dozen or so transfer stations in Dutchess County to be zero waste stations, but. I can't get a hold of Richard Anthony and Associates. If you can help us figure out the value, the current value, not the 2009 value, but the current value of waste stream in Dutchess County, that would be a big, because that was one of our selling points to Rob Weiss, that this is money, they're valuable stuff, and the market still exists. That guy Ryan Hart from Replenish that was on our call last Tuesday, working with you in Warren County. So put that in your bonnet as something.
We can talk about that, definitely. I can help.
Anybody else? Multi-seat ranked choice voting with a proportional representation. Doreen, I see the private message. I got you. It was Tea Party. I'm copying and pasting that, Mike. Mike, could you say that verbally out loud?
Yeah, so I just shared a couple of things based on what you were suggesting. Last year, we were trying to beat back a bill that was really horrible in Florida that provided massive amounts of subsidies for building new and expanding existing publicly owned trash incinerators in Florida, and shoring up their electric rates as well. So it was $100 million a year subsidy, which that's what it started off as. Then they took out the price tag and just made it a blank check. That passed, unfortunately, but in the fight against it that we were coordinating as best we could, we got a letter from a chief of staff of Trump's EPA. She was a former person at that point. So obviously Trump was not in office last year, but when he was, she was a top person in his Environmental Protection Agency, and she wrote a scathing piece that we helped line up against incineration and against that subsidy. And so that's in a conservative online journal called Floridian Press. Also in Maryland, prior to that, there was an 8-year battle against a Wheelabrator trash incinerator that was defeated in 2014. And it was Tea Party Republicans who ran the county government in Carroll County, who, after activists, including Tea Party activists involved with the group that's mostly otherwise lefty Democrat types, who analyzed the contracts and convinced their government leaders that it was worth spending $1 million to get out of that contract because it was such a financially bad deal for them. And they did, and that collapsed the deal and it never got built. And one of the legislators, a right-wing Republican who is in a Democrat trifecta state, so it's the bluest state in Maryland, party-wise, but he consistently introduces bills every year to strip away the renewable energy subsidies in Maryland, where they put it equivalent to wind power in the renewable energy mandate. So it's to be crazy, and his amendment at one point actually passed the House, or no, I think it was the Senate. It got killed in the House, but he's had some traction doing that. So if you're
what's his name?
You can point to him. It's
Greenway and
no,
Zero Waste.
I want to say Young, or no, it's something else. Michael Huff, Hough.
All right, I'm taking notes. God bless.
We're gonna cash out in a minute, but I'd like to remind people that September 5th, we're going to be making our first presentation to the town of Hurley, 6 o'clock. And Hurley is ideal because there's funding available to build a zero waste training facility there at the transfer station, old landfill. There's plenty of space, and that's what we are planning to do. What success looks like for us is to build out to all of the transfer stations in Ulster, then every one that we can. After that, to make them zero waste transfer stations. So, and then secondly, just to give you an opportunity to see exactly how it works, because we have the Garlic Festival, and Garlic Festival is September 30th and October 1st. We're going for 95%. We think we're gonna be able to reach that. Everyone is psyched, all the vendors and all of the volunteers are going to be pulling for that. So I want to, Josephine says no.
What date was that for the Garlic Festival? What?
It's
30th.
September 30th and October 1st.
Great, thank you.
This bag, right, this potato chip bag, Humble Chips, is a bag that we worked on developing, say, 15 years ago. We did the testing for it. It's completely compostable. It says, I don't know if you can read it, compostable at the Greenway facility. And that bag is an indicator of the beginning of the change. And it's been in the works for more than 20 years. It's put out by Monsanto makes the resin, and Cargill and BASF created the technology that makes that bag from the waste of making ethanol. So it is in the future, and in the intermediate future, there's only going to be two parts to the waste stream. There's going to be a compostable component, which includes all of the wood. There's going to be the metal component, and then we're going to recover all the aggregate. So at Hurley, there's opportunity to create that model. And that's what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be doing it in the next year. So we're going to, like I say, we're going to be leaving this conversation, but we were very, very happy to see that people are trying.
We got to get up early.
Great to see you.
My wife just, I hope I don't get in trouble with this because this is being recorded. My wife just texted me, honey, and the next text was, it's been over 2 hours. And then, and then and then it's like the next text was, when are you going to be done? So, so we got to wrap.
Okay, but thank you all very, very, very much. And you can contact us at any time, any of you, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all, Shabazz, Josephine, Mike, Neil, my mom, Manna Jo Greene, Lisa Call. I'm so enthused. Thank you so much. It's a tricky issue. It's a tricky issue, but if you do it right and you're smart enough and energetic enough, I think you can do this right and make it work for you, especially with Ted and with people like Matthew Carroll pledging to mobilize dozens of hundreds of people to stand next to you and Neil at some sort of rally press conference in October. I think you just might be on the road to victory. And I think Manna might be standing next to you too at an event like that. Who knows? My Mount Vesuvius in the form of my family is about to blow. So I have to go. I will be doing this next Tuesday. I don't know if I would love it if everybody could come back. The whole point is we're trying to, mobilize a buttload of people September 7th. We don't know yet if it's going to be 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, 6:30. But on the first, in a couple of days, it's going to be September. And usually you can find out exactly what the agenda is for that month's county legislature meetings on the first of the month. Okay, so I'll send the email out. You don't have to wait for me. Go to the website for the Dutchess County Legislature, click on agenda the morning of September 1st, and then after we find out, we just got to mobilize people to show up and say their 3 minutes. And like Vanessa Agadello, who's the New York State Director for the Energy Justice Network, has talked about, and she's with Westchester Alternatives for Sustainable Solutions. We're building a movement. We're bearing witness. We may not win this battle, but we're going to try to win the war. And the other piece of it is, she has offered the canvas or the Canva, the whole thing about WAS. If you go to Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions, if you go to their Facebook page, you can see they have not officially endorsed candidates, but candidates who have taken a pledge, the Zero Waste Pledge. All right, you're about to get food. So Lisa, I would love it for you to consider, because Zero Waste Dutchess is doing that. Zero Waste Dutchess is going to come up with some really clever, cool graphics. Maybe we're just going to borrow Westchester's, and we're going to say, Lisa Call has taken, when the Zero Waste Pledge is basically three things. You agree that Dutchess County should move towards zero waste. You agree that Dutchess County, the government, should contract out for a zero waste consultant, and you agree that the incinerator should shut down as soon as possible. So anyway, and I'm fairly sure that hopefully Ted Miller and I and all of us can convince Tommy Zerhelen to do that as well. So I got to go. Thank you all so much.
Someone save the chat, please.
How do we save the chat?
You just press the three buttons at the bottom of the chat.
All right, Mike told me that last time. I saved the chat and then I wasn't able to access it last time.
In the place where you
If
can.
someone knows how to do it, please do it and send it to Joel.
In the
I saved it. What do we do now?
Okay, once you saved it, it should open up a pop-up window. So when you close this program, you'll have a folder open on your computer and the text pad will be in there. If you don't see it there, go under I think it's just the users directory, and let me check on mine. Yeah, you go to users and then your name and then documents, and then there's a directory called Zoom, and every chat you've ever had is saved by date in there.
I just sent it to Joel. I just texted it to you, Joel.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, man. Thank you, everybody. Mom, Matthew, Lisa, Pam, and Mike, all of you, thank you so much. I'll be here next Tuesday night. That'll only be 2 days before the speak out. And then we got to hold these people accountable too, because they may not do the right thing. Hopefully we get some good people elected. Thank you all. You give me hope. Say goodnight. Say goodnight, John Boy. Bye. Thank you, Lisa. All right. Ending it all. There we go.